Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, as usual, wherever you are in the world. Jose here, welcoming you to another episode of Amazing Worlds, where today I am going to be reviewing / recommending / praising the Saga of the Swamp Thing by Alan Moore, writer, and artists John Totleben, Veitch, Alfredo Alacalá, and there was, Stephen Bissette as well. So, this is the fantastic 6 volumes. I've only got 5 here. The first one is here. There you go. This is the great Saga of the Swamp Thing by the genius, by the magician of Northampton, the wizard that is Alan Moore. And some people have got strong opinions about Alan Moore. Some people seem to disparage about him, criticize him. For me, Alan Moore has got the right to say and do whatever he wants. He's written so many good comics, he's done so much for the industry, he's broken so many boundaries that I don't care what he does anymore. For me, it's enough. The guy can write whatever he wants and I'm perfectly happy with it. Saga of the Swamp Thing. Why is this so good? In order to understand it, we need to have a little bit of context as to when the Swamp Thing came about, what happened to it, and why did Alan Moore get involved. So, this Swamp Thing, I'm sure maybe most of you are familiar with it or have seen it around or heard of it. It's a DC superhero created in 1972 by Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson, and it was a short-lived comic. It only lasted for about 4 years before it got cancelled. It started as a sort of one-off thing, then it got its own series, and it just died a slow death over the 4 years. And that was it. But then, the great filmmaker that is Wes Craven, in 1982, decided to direct a movie based on the Swamp Thing. And therefore, Len Wein, the creator, who at the time was an editor at DC, thought, well, wouldn't it be a great idea if there were a new comic to go with the movie? And everyone thought it was a great idea, but Len Wein didn't want to get involved with it. So they got Martin Pascoe involved in this sort of relaunch of the Swamp Thing, and Martin Pascoe wrote the first 19 issues, and then Alan Moore, from issue 20 onwards, took over, and that's where the magic happened. Alright, so basically Swamp Thing was this very minor secondary character in the DC universe, in the same universe as Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Lantern, etc., but sort of in a more sort of horror-oriented thing. And basically the story of the Swamp Thing is a scientist that in a radioactive accident drowns in a swamp and is revived as this Swamp Thing monster human-plant hybrid. Okay, and it's got adventures and stuff like that. When Alan Moore came on board, he had the radical idea of completely sort of revamping the character, sort of retconning, keeping in line with the first 19 issues by Martin Pascoe, but the first thing he did was reframe the character, because he thought that as a monster trying to find its humanity back, that sort of limited the scope of the character. So the first thing he did, the first story he wrote is called Loose Ends, where Alan Moore just tied the loose ends from the previous 19 issues. And then the next story that he wrote is called The Anatomy. And it's fantastic because what he did was totally rethink the character, reframe the character. Swamp Thing is not a human that is trapped in this monstrous body trying to find its humanity. The scientist that fell in the swamp actually died in the swamp. He doesn't exist anymore, he's not a monster anymore. And what we have is an elemental force of nature, this Swamp Thing, that thinks that it is human, but it's actually not. It's not. Alec died in the Alec Holland, the scientist. He died in the swamp, and this thing sucked his memories and thinks it's human, but it's not. And that opened the doors for the Swamp Thing to go and do and be its own thing and explore the underworld of the DC universe. Over the 6 volumes, we've got different settings for this Swamp Thing character. So basically, in book 1, what we have is the reframing of the character. So the reconstruction of the Swamp Thing in the way that Alan Moore envisaged, and we are also introduced to some secondary DC villains, heroes, which people probably are not very familiar with. So Etrigan the Demon, Deadman, the Phantom Stranger, and one of the genius of Alan Moore, he introduced John Constantine, Hellblazer, in Swamp Thing, which then went on to have its own fantastic, amazingly long-run series in the DC universe. Book 2, so the second volume in the story, basically Swamp Thing's love interest. I'm not going to do any spoilers, but she ends up condemned to hell, so Swamp Thing literally journeys to hell to rescue her soul. And monsters, demons galore. It's a truly incredible journey into a very, very different side of the DC universe that probably people are not very familiar with at all. Book 3 looks more at Swamp Thing as an elemental force, and also, like, the main arc of the story is what Alan Moore called the American Gothic. So we introduce here to ghosts, vampires, racism, all this sort of stuff in this very sort of swamp, bayou type setting that is, fantastically terrifying. It's a great horror story with all the quirks of sort of deep South American Gothic that goes with it. Book 4 completes the American Gothic story arc. We are reminded how Swamp Thing fits in the DC universe, because Batman, Superman, The Flash, Wonder Woman do make appearances throughout the run. There is a sort of confrontation in book 5 when Abby Arcane, so the Swamp Thing's girlfriend, love interest, is arrested for having, I suppose, interspecies relationships with the Swamp Thing, and she's taken to Gotham, and the Swamp Thing basically goes to Gotham to rescue her, and there is a sort of confrontation with the Batman and stuff like that. And then this is where, towards the end, I think, of the series, things took a little bit of a turn for the weird, and then we're off to space. Literally, we're off to space. The Swamp Thing flies to space, and then in book 6, the book acquires more of a sci-fi aspect. Is far less horror, and we have the Green Lanterns there in book 6, a really obscure character from the DC universe, Adam Strange, this man that can travel to other planets but only temporarily, and then he's snapped back to Earth. So we encounter him there, and here the art in book 6, the artists changed. It wasn't the team of John Totleben and Steve Bissette, but actually Rick Veitch and Alfredo Alacalá. And that sort of eventually something comes back to Earth. The last story in book 6 is called Loose Ends Reprise, so it's a throwback to the first story that Alan Moore wrote, and that sort of concludes the Swamp Thing saga written by Alan Moore. The series continued after that, and you can still find it. But this run is so iconic and it's so creative that it really does merit being on anyone's bookshelf. For me, what I found about the Saga of the Swamp Thing is how the horror element can be so much a part of the DC universe, and all these secondary characters that are underexploited. DC is very much focused on the traditional superhero thing, Batman, Superman, etc., etc. But there's this other layer of much darker, sinister, horrific, I don't want to say superheroes, but sort of characters, meta-humans, so to speak, which are, for me, far more appealing than your traditional Batman and Superman. It was shocking to see that all these, John Constantine, Hellblazer, Swamp Thing, Batman, to realize that they live in a shared universe, and yet the settings and the adventures are so different, and the feel of the worlds they inhabit is so different, that I wish DC did a lot more with this kind of, and there's so much potential there, which is why Swamp Thing is what spawned, is what created the Vertigo label for DC, where they put out the more mature readers material. Swamp Thing started it off, and to me so much more superior than any other stuff that DC ever put out. I've got a whole stack of shelves of Vertigo material. There's one particular story which I think it was filler. It was just filler, and it was just really weird. It's just something interacting with the Pogo comic strip from the 50s, I think it was, and it's just really weird, and it's like, what's going on here? But I suppose it's Alan Moore's tribute to that. I have to talk about the art, and the art of the series is amazing, not because of the quality of the pencils, although I'm not saying it's bad at all, no, it's really good, but to me what really caught my attention as I read through the series was the page compositions, and I saw things in Saga of the Swamp Thing that I hadn't seen before in comics, and I haven't seen repeated after. I mean, some of the page layouts are truly, truly trippy. Probably all in the direction of Alan Moore and his famously detailed scripts. But some of the page compositions are like an LSD trip. Not that I actually have experienced firsthand what that feels like. But the splash of color on the pages, it's almost hallucinogenic. It is very trippy. Really complex sometimes to know what order you need to read the panels and see what's going on, but it's a feast for the eyes, and like I said, I haven't seen anything like that repeated again in any other comic that I have read. So there is some truly incredible artwork in Saga of the Swamp Thing in terms of page designs, panel layouts, coloring, and stuff like that. And the art is consistent throughout the whole series. Any of the 4 artists that took part in it really did a truly great job. And even some of the character redesigns of something, it feels natural. It's great, and you do get that feel of late 70s, early 80s kind of Hammer House of Horror type movies feel to it. It is, except for book 6, where, as I said, it's a bit more sci-fi. The first 5 books, the American Gothic story arc, it is a great horror comic, and anyone that likes horror should really get their hands on the Saga of the Swamp Thing. A slight issue that I found with it, but very slight, is that you are starting on issue 20 and you are missing the first 19 issues, which don't bear much relevance to the story, but you can actually get your hands on those. So DC did put out a collection of the Saga of the Swamp Thing Bronze Age stories, so you can get them as an hardback omnibus and also in 2 collected trade paperbacks. So you can get the original Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson stories, but more importantly, I suppose, for completeness of the story, you can get the first 19 issues written by Martin Pascoe, pick those, read them, and then start with Saga of the Swamp Thing in the collected trade paperbacks. I suppose this is all I wanted to say about Saga of the Swamp Thing. A definite must. It's very recommendable from my opinion. Really enjoy it. And as I was preparing my notes and getting my script ready for this review, I feel like I should reread them as soon as I'm done with what I've got going at the moment. Really worth it, really recommendable. My comic review videos don't seem to be as popular as some of my fantasy series, but I like them. I don't care. It's my channel. I'm doing my thing, and I'll go back to the fantasy next time. Anyway, I digress. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, let me know, spread the love, spread the word. I hope you're keeping safe, I hope you're keeping fine, and I will see you next time.